Good morning. I'd like to show you how I cut houndstooth dovetails. Here's a jewellery box that I've been working on, and you can see from here it's got houndstooth dovetails on the one side and then through dovetails on the other. The marking out of this joint is very important. You've got on the one side here the need for even spacing. If it's not, that doesn't look right. And on the other side here, what you're trying to do is to achieve half sizes. But if you actually took a marking gauge and marked it half the distance from there, because here you're actually removing a larger portion of the dovetail, then you would end up with pins which look smaller than half size. So I tend to set it about 60–65% in order to end up with dovetails which look about half the size of the ones in between. And you can see here this also needs to be very nicely balanced in order for the effect to be good. Okay. So here I have two boards that I'm going to do the dovetailing on. You can see here that they're marked out with blue dots which identify where the outside of the board is and which bit goes with which. I've already marked out here my dovetail spacing. I simply did this along the end with a ruler, or you can use calipers if you prefer. So there are two distinct lines on here, two distinct cutting gauge lines, and then they just alternate along there. So now it's time to cut them out. So to do that, I'm going to use my Japanese saw and my magnetic dovetail guide. So we cut one long one, one short one, and make sure we concentrate. So with one side done, we simply flip the board and work on the other side. The little guide keeps things dead square at exactly the same angle, and it makes the job a lot easier. Now we need to remove the waste. I use my New Concepts jeweler's saw for this. So with all the waste sawn out and chiselled down to the line, this is what we end up with. Now it's time to mark the pins. I use my dovetail alignment board. Bring that level, and then we take the tailboard, and that allows us to slide this up and down here, enabling us to mark it out. So we slide that flush, and we take our marking knife, make sure the marks are nice and clear. This is a very useful knife with a very fine blade, and it enables you to get right in amongst the dovetails. A lovely sharp point as well. Okay, so that's the marking out done. Now with the gauge settings that we had before, so I marked this one, the bottom of the dovetails, and we do exactly the same here on the pin board. So we mark that across the bottom, reverse it. And then with the gauge which we use to mark the shorter dovetails, we then need to mark this against the end grain coming from the front here. So we just need to mark this across here. Now it's time to cut the pins. And I take the magnetic guide, used it that way round for the tails, this way round for the pins. And then we repeat the process, turning the board round and using the guide in from the other side. So with all the waste removed now, but before we chop down to the lines, I like to identify which of the pins is going to be the short pin. So we're looking here, 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 and here. We haven't made any mistakes so far. And what I like to do here is to just go into the back side, on one side, and then the other, okay, so with those done, what we're aiming to do here is we're aiming to chisel back to the line, but only on each of the alternate ones, the ones that we've marked up there. So by undercutting the back here, as we chisel down, that just prevents it, when the wood splits, from going past the line and spoiling what would be the inside of the box or whatever we're doing here. So now we put it in the vise, and each alternate pins we chisel back to the line. Being careful not to take off too much at once. And then the last one, we just put the chisel into the gauge line and tap down, and I like to just undercut that slightly. So that we've created a small pin, and then we repeat that all the way along and chisel out the waste to the line. So with everything chiseled back to the line, on the pin board. It's time to see if they fit. So they're beginning to go together. So now it's time for a little bit of force. And there you have it. Houndstooth dovetails.